Welcome one and all. I hope you guys are doing well. Steve here with Geek Boulevard, bringing you your weekly movie review. I wanted to come on here and give you my review for Black Phone 2, which is in theaters now. I was eagerly anticipating this, mainly because I wasn't expecting a sequel, but yet here we are. They actually did release a popcorn bucket and cup combo that looked interesting. I really just wanted the cup, but when I went to the theater, I wanted to see if they had the cups sold separately, and they said, no, we can only sell you the combo. I do have the combo. I have the bucket here. It's got the Black Phone 2 logo that's kind of raised, which I thought was kind of cool, and also the phone booth itself, which is also raised on the tin. So I think it looks a lot cooler in person than it does on the video when they announced that there was going to be a popcorn bucket collection. But the inside is red, which I thought was kind of neat. But yeah, definitely looks a lot cooler in person. But the piece de resistance, or at least to me anyway, is the Black Phone 2 collectible cup, which has Ethan Hawke's creepy mask on the front there, which I thought was kind of cool. But the real, great, actually no, this is the piece de resistance right here, which is the little grabber sort of figurine that comes on top of the cup. That I thought was pretty cool. I don't really buy anything collectible these days when it comes to movies, so I wanted to take my shot with this one, and I lucked out. My first ever collectible popcorn bucket combo, I guess you could say. So I walked away somewhat happy. But you're not here for the popcorn bucket or the cup. You're here to know what I thought of Black Phone 2, and that is what I'm going to give to you. Black Phone 2 is directed by Scott Derrickson, who directed the first film. It is rated R with a runtime of 1 hour and 54 minutes. Bad dreams haunt 15-year-old Gwen as she receives calls from the Black Phone and sees disturbing visions of 3 boys being stalked at a winter camp. Accompanied by her brother Finn, they head to the camp to solve the mystery, only to confront the Grabber, a killer who's grown even more powerful in death. For now, let's get into my positives. Again, Ethan Hawke is amazing as the Grabber, and there's just something about how he carries his performance as this character in general, really, that is just very dark and disgusting in all the best ways. We do explore more with his past in this film that I was eager to learn more about, so I'm glad that the story goes into like the mystery of him just a bit more, but it's not something where it takes away the threat of him, and his presence is very much felt throughout this entire film, even when he's not on screen. And I liked how Derrickson wanted the audience to know that the events of the first movie have this lasting effect. This is a very traumatic experience that Finn has gone through in the first film. Derrickson wants the audience to know that even though the Grabber is gone, he hasn't really left. And that brings me to Mason Thames and Madeline McGraw, who return as Finn and Gwen from the first film, who are a little older now, and they're doing their best to try to live some sort of a normal life after what happened. But McGraw is, she chews up a lot of the scenery on here, which makes sense because the film shifts perspective to her. So she's the central character this time around. And I really loved her performance in this, and she did an amazing job of not only being scared, but when the scene called for there to be some dramatic moments, like she really crushed it. But Finn is not necessarily pushed to the side too much, which I like because there is sort of a resolution with his character as well. So I like the fact that Derrickson still wanted to have Finn be, sort of a central character. He was more of a supporting character here, but he still had stuff to do. So it wasn't like he was completely moved to the side, which I appreciated. The way the movie differentiates the real world from the so-called, dream world, I personally liked. It uses an old, Super 8 filter during those scenes to make them just a little bit more ominous, a little more creepy, and it reminds me of the home movies from Sinister, which is hands down my favorite Derrickson film, which is also starring Ethan Hawke. There's just something so macabre, even when nothing's really happening in those moments, that just really unsettles me, and that just goes to show that how good of a job they did with those scenes. I've been waiting for Derrickson to do something a little more Sinister related in terms of projects when it comes to that type of experimentation, so I just like those little style choices that he decides to make with some of these films that he directs. Black Phone 2 is a sequel I didn't really expect to come to fruition, and even though I did enjoy the movie for what it was, there are still some issues that I want to address. So without further ado, let's get into the negatives. Now for this bit, I'm just gonna nitpick a little bit, but there were a few moments where I was like struggling to hear what Ethan Hawke was saying when he had the mask on. I didn't have that issue in the first film at all, so I don't know if maybe there was just something wrong with the ADR in this one, or maybe it was my theater specifically, I don't know. But there was just some lines that I felt were just so muffled, I genuinely could not hear what he was saying. Also, the film leans into the supernatural side of it far more, I feel, than the first one, and I wasn't really too keen on that, I'll be honest. The later portions of the film go pretty heavy into that, to where it feels more like a crutch rather than like a nice addition to the story. I actually really like the simplicity of the first film, where the supernatural element was much smaller scale, but still complemented the narrative without leaning too far into it. And here it just brings the film down just a bit for me. It makes it a little bit too out there. I admire the risks that they took by taking bigger swings creatively, but I just feel the simplicity of the first film is just far superior. And unfortunately, I was in that mindset of like, okay, we got a sequel that we didn't really ask for, but it honestly didn't need to be made. The original is a pretty self-contained story. It's far more effective in its narrative as opposed to this film, I would say. Am I mad that I saw the movie? Absolutely not. I think it explores some pretty cool ideas and concepts, and I think there are some really strong scenes in this movie, but those swings that they take, they just didn't quite pull it off for me. The movie does kind of leave sort of on an open-ended note. It does conclude Finn and Gwen's story for sure, but there is sort of like a slight opening to where like the grabber could return if a third movie is made. But if a third movie isn't made, this is, I would say, a nice conclusion to, you know, Finn and Gwen's story. I feel like we don't need to revisit their story after this ever again. I think it's done now. Overall, I'm giving Black Phone 2 a score of 3 out of 5. The performances from Mason Thames, Madeline McGraw, and especially Ethan Hawke are fantastic, and Derrickson's style of horror is something I truly admire in his work, and this film is very much a Derrickson horror film in that regard. However, the film leans into far more supernatural territory compared to the first, and is more of a crutch rather than an elevation of the story. It's entertaining, but is ultimately an unnecessary sequel. Those are my thoughts. Now I want to know what you guys thought of Black Phone 2. Have you seen it yet? Have you seen the first film? Let me know what you thought of this one or the first film down in the comments below. Tell me what your favorite Scott Derrickson film is if you want to. I'd love to know your thoughts. And of course, if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel, tick the bell icon so you can be notified when new movie reviews or trailer reactions drop on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Much love to you all. Remember to stay classy, stay geeky, and I'll catch you in the next video.